welcome to your weekend warm-up ahead of the Australian Grand Prix. It's me, Rosanna Tennant, and Lawrence Barretto down under this weekend. Lawrence, great to see you in this beautiful paddock.
Thank you, it's so nice to be back.
It really is. Round 3, I cannot believe we've already had 2 races of 2022. A few days have passed now since Saudi, but the challenge still exists. So I'm going to give you 90 seconds to recap the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. Are you ready?
I was born ready, let's do this.
Go!
Sergio Perez, pole position, first time in 215 races that he managed to put that car on pole, first Mexican to get pole. And it was looking so good for victory until the safety car came out for Nicholas Latifi's accident. That threw him down the order. It promoted 2 Ferraris and Max Verstappen ahead of him. Then P4 for Checo, that was the best he could do. Max was second, chasing down Charles. Charles looks like he was going to win, and then Max got him, and then Charles got him back, and then Max got him again and won the race. Charles finished second, Carlos Sainz his third podium in a row, George Russell came 5th, Lewis Hamilton came 10th. Is that enough?
Perfect, that's 40 seconds. You're quicker than even Jolyon Palmer. Look at that, 41.
I'll take that. And if I could use a few more seconds, I should have said Mick Schumacher, massive crash in qualifying, couldn't even take part. But the good news is, he's back here this weekend and he'll be in the car.
He certainly is. We shall hear from him a little bit later on. Great to see him back on the grid. But let's talk about Australia. We are finally back. Of course, we can cast our minds back to the beginning of the season of 2020 when we were all here, ready and raring to go. And then, of course, the global pandemic hit. I just feel like the city, and we're happy to be here, but I think the city are so happy for us to be here. The Melbourne city, that is.
Yeah, just walking around the place. You've been up early, suffer with jet lag just like me, and it's just...
No, I don't.
I
don't get it.
You're just up early. You're just up early anyway.
Yeah.
It's just been nice to see how happy people are. There's merchandise stands all over the city. People, it's a sellout here this weekend. First time ever this event's been sold out. People just want racing at this pretty mega track, which is very different this year.
Yeah, it is, because you went out there yesterday. Tell me a little bit about it. There are so many changes for the drivers to wrap their heads around.
So firstly, they've resurfaced the place for the first time since Formula One's come here in 1996. So the surface and the way the tyres operate is going to be very, very different. They made a number of changes to the corner, essentially making the circuit faster. It's 5 seconds quicker. And the most important change is probably they've taken out the 9 and 10 chicane, and now that's just a fast, kinking area where they've got 2 DRS zones. Should improve the quality of the racing. That's the purpose of all of the changes. And they've moved the pit lane slightly further out. That should mean the pit lane speed comes up 20 kilometres an hour, and that should improve strategy options.
I've heard that the V8 drivers, obviously the supercars are here this weekend, they've been saying how much of a handful it looks in their cars. I mean, that's a touring car. In a Formula One car, it's going to be an incredible spectacle.
We've seen a few incidents, a few big accidents even today in the V8s today, and it's going to be very tricky for these guys, especially as the track's going to be so green. It always is here in Australia, but in terms of the surface, it's just going to be very slippery because it's the new asphalt, new tarmac down. So it's going to be a massive challenge for these guys.
And of course, the track is going to evolve massively. As you say, it's going to be green, so each session it's going to bed in, and there are so many support races. You can hear, you can hear some of them now. So it's going to get faster and faster. Cannot wait. It is going to be a sensational weekend. People are queuing at this point, like up against the gate, trying to get a glimpse of the drivers and a glimpse of Lawrence, of course, as well. Everybody's excited to be back down under, especially the Formula One drivers.
Australian Grand Prix. How much are you looking forward to going home?
Very much. I'm looking forward to going home, just in general, going to Australia, but for the race as well. Been a long time since, I think like even my last real kind of race there was 2018, because 19 didn't last long, 20 we went but didn't race, so it's been a while since I feel I really competed there, and hanging out to get back, and I have missed it. I think the crowd's going to be pretty nuts, so they're excited to have F1 back.
I just love Australia as a whole. I mean, obviously that's where I've done my Formula One debut in 2018, and it has always particular feeling to it, so I'm really looking forward to it.
I think Melbourne is one of the best Grand Prix weekends of the year, to be honest. You know, I like the atmosphere there, how the whole city embraced, the race, and the fans very, very passionate. So I think it's going to be good, especially after a few years that Formula One was not hosting the race there.
Can't wait, to be honest. As you know, I love Australia, and it's been a couple of years that we raced there. It's going to be nice to go back and hopefully see lots of fans, and also the revised track I think is step into the right direction for sure for racing, so looking forward.
grab a few beers on the river.
Why not?
The fans are incredible down under. It's my first ever Formula One race was in Melbourne. Great memories, great city in Melbourne, and just looking forward to the whole experience. So yeah, can't wait to be there.
Yeah, I always love going to Australia. Just of course, because of good memories, but also I just like the place. It's a great track. There's something like now it's not the first race anymore, but it used to be for many years, and there's some special atmosphere going on there. I just like it. So I'm looking forward.
It's always a great race. We always enjoy going there. The track is awesome, and I know they made some changes to the track, so it'll be like going to a bit of a newer circuit. But the crowd has always been spectacular there, yes, it was always a track that I really enjoyed driving. So, and Australia is just generally a pretty awesome country. So.
We spoke at the top of the show, Lawrence, about Mick Schumacher. He is feeling great, feeling happy to be back down in Australia, and I love the fact that he can remember his father racing here.
Yeah. It's really nice. It's a special place for him. He's got really happy memories from it. But it's just great to see him back in the car. It was a big accident for him in Saudi Arabia, and equally frustrating because this car can score points and score big points, and really the Haas should be having both cars in the top 8 here, maybe even the top 6.
I know Gunther Steiner, the team principal at Haas, saying that they expect to score points now at every race, at least until halfway through the season, because he thinks perhaps some of the teams will catch up on development. It's the team's 125th Grand Prix this weekend. Happy birthday. So hopefully some great things coming their way. As we say, Mick Schumacher feeling better. Kev Magnussen's gone well here in the past as well. But I had a chat with Mick yesterday to find out how he's feeling ahead of the Australian Grand Prix. Well, Mick, how are you, first and foremost?
Good. Tanned. It feels like it. Maybe a bit burnt. But I've been spending some time in Australia, which was great.
Fantastic. So no long-lasting effects after the accident or anything, still ongoing?
No, all going.
Fantastic. So you've been in Australia for a few days. What have you been up to?
Went to see Byron Bay, went to Brisbane, and went to visit the Australia Zoo. So filled with a lot of action, filled with meeting great people and having great experiences.
Fantastic. I saw you were with crocodiles and alligators. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I went to see Robert in the Australia Zoo, which was great. Great meeting him, great meeting his family. I mean, I grew up, seeing Steve going into the wild and, catching alligators and crocodiles and snakes and stuff. So it was always part of my childhood. And, being there now again after so many years and seeing it in person was really nice.
Did you wrestle a crocodile?
Not yet. I asked him if I could, and hopefully I'll be able to do that soon.
We will wait with bated breath. And just a word on your car for this weekend. Obviously it was in a bit of a tricky state at the end of Saudi. Any kind of implications that there might be extra parts or missing parts this weekend?
For now, everything looks to be, in one piece, and new pieces here and there, and no major changes in terms of upgrades or whatever. But we have a new chassis, a different chassis, which actually carries a nice number, one that I like, so happy about that.
Which one is that?
2203.
Okay. We've moved up the paddock a little bit, and I have to say, Lawrence, this paddock it's just glorious. I love the leafiness, the green, it's just wonderful.
I love the atmosphere. It's a really cosy feel, and you've got these tables and chairs here for people to just relax and catch up. It's a very sociable paddock, and it's just so nice to see so many people back in this wonderful paddock.
It certainly is. The cafe culture fully on show here in Melbourne, even in the F1 paddock. So let's talk F1 teams. Alfa Romeo, I feel that they are oozing confidence, and I almost get the impression that Fred Vasseur is very excited about the potential of the car this weekend and also the season.
Yeah, they threw everything at this year's car after such a difficult year last year, and they've ended up with a car that's very fine. The detail on it is incredible, and Valtteri Bottas and Guan Yu Zhou have managed to deliver proper results from that car every time they got behind the wheel. And the thing is, for them, if they can score heavily this year, early in the year, they can push themselves up the Constructors' Championship. They should get both cars in the top 8 round here, easy.
I love the fact that Joe has watched the race here in Australia so many times. I think it's a really special moment for him coming to Melbourne to race, and we know that Valtteri goes well here. Last person to win, of course, back in 2019. Let's talk about Aston Martin.
Yeah.
Great that Sebastian Vettel is back on the grid, has recovered from COVID-19, but Lawrence, there is a job to do there because he's on the back foot.
Well, we saw how difficult Nico Hülkenberg found it just being parachuted in. Of course, it's not the same for Sebastian. He had testing, but missing 2 races and medically he wasn't well with COVID-19. It's going to be tough for him to get up to speed, but he's a 4-time world champion. He's got that grounding from testing, so he kind of knows fundamentally where the car is. And as soon as he gets out in practice, I'm pretty sure he'll feel like he's back up to speed. No turn.
Well, someone else who needs to sort of get back up to speed, I imagine the Williams team as a whole. Of course, a tricky weekend for Nicholas Latifi. Both drivers, Alex doing probably a better job than Nicky, but both drivers just struggling with these new cars a little bit.
Yeah, I think Alex has really got more out of that car than it really deserves, and I think that's partly why they employed him. He's got that experience from Red Bull last year, but he has really, him and Nicky have really struggled to get the results out of the car because it hasn't got that pure pace. It's just lacking a bit of downforce, like a lot of guys are going to say up and down this paddock, but them just more so than any other team.
You sound like a Formula 1 driver.
I know, as I said it, I was like, uh-oh. And Williams are really struggling in particular because they didn't have a mule car. They're the only team on the grid not to test the 18-inch tyres. So they've come into this season without that grounding that everyone else has had. And internally, they're kind of feeling that that's what's really holding them back, and it's going to take them a few races to get on top of it.
Well, you mentioned the word tyres, and I'm going to pick up on that because this weekend is an odd offering from Pirelli. We've got a jump in the compound, so C2, C3, and then C5, the first time that we've seen the softest compound this year. Why have they done that?
So Mario Isla was saying that the C3 and the C4 are so close in percentage that it doesn't matter to kind of do that little jump up to C5. You've got a new surface here, so you want harder tyres here just because you're not quite sure how it's going to react. But then you also throw the jeopardy of this softer tyre in, and that should really, in theory, mix up the strategies.
It was interesting, if we turn our attention now to the AlphaTauri team, both Pierre and Yuki saying it's too early to tell how these new tyres are behaving really. We've had two circuits, Bahrain, very aggressive on the tyres, then Saudi, a totally different circuit, and then we come to here. When do we think we will start to know how these tyres are behaving, or is that just more Formula 1 driver speak?
I think it's going to take a fair few races, Rosanna, because we're going to need to go to a few more different circuits, just seeing how they're reacting. It's more slow speed, more high speed, more medium speed circuits. But these are Formula 1 teams, and they are going to get on top of it very quickly. And once they've got a bank of data, which they're starting to build up now, that should make kind of going into a weekend and planning their weekend much easier.
Well, AlphaTauri, just talking about them as a whole, it looked like they were going to have, well, potentially a good weekend. It was all very tricky for them in Saudi Arabia, but it looks like they should be scoring points with both those cars.
Yeah, I think Pierre was just glad to get on the board in Saudi Arabia because that car fundamentally, I think they believe is quick. They just don't seem to understand it at the moment. Just as Fernando
just casually strolling behind us, yeah.
He's so suave, isn't he? AlphaTauri really feel they've got a good car. They just don't quite understand why it's doing the things that it's doing. And so if they can make progress with that, I think that's a car that should be capable of scoring points. I really feel for Yuki at the moment because he's really struggled to get on top of that car and then had such bad luck in Saudi Arabia. So hopefully his luck can turn this weekend.
I was slightly distracted by that because I don't know if Steve can turn the camera to look at Layla McKay there, the lovely girl who's a big Lewis fan. But did Fernando just give his cap to her? I think he might have done.
Yeah.
Look at that. So cool. Here she comes. There she goes. I think she did. I think it's signed as well.
What a great gift. That's cool, isn't it?
That is serious. I love that. Well, there we go. Moving on to Alpine then. You had a chat with Esteban. What's the mood in their camp at the moment?
Really, really good. I think Esteban struggled a little bit in testing to understand how the car was operating, but at the end of the Bahrain test and then into these next 2 races, he scored points in both races. Maybe slightly outperformed by Fernando in Saudi Arabia, but I think both those guys are happy campers at the moment because Alpine are punching towards the top of the midfield, and these guys have got on top of the porpoising, which I think is significant. They're starting to understand how to get the best out of that package, and I think generally speaking, where they've been in years gone by, they feel like this is a car that can push forward rather than trying to hold on to the pack in front.
Are we going to see more battling between the two of them? Do we think Otmar Zafnauer, their team principal, has had words?
Otmar will probably not want to see more battling, but I actually think because they're quite evenly matched at the moment, I do think we're going to see some more tension on the pit wall.
I loved how Esteban in the post-race show was like, no, it's all cool, we were racing, it was great, nothing bad happened, and yet during the race we saw Otmar just shaking his head. I was like, oh dear. Well, let's have a listen in to what Esteban Ocon was saying to Lawrence earlier on.
Esteban, we arrive in Australia and you've had a great run of form in the first couple of races. How are you feeling?
Thank you, Lawrence. Yeah, it's been nice at the moment to start the season in this way. You know, P7 and P6. It's been 2 strong results, definitely. But it's not all easy out there. It's very close with the Alfa Tauri, the Alfa Romeos, and the Haas. They are very quick cars, especially in the race. We were fast in quali in Jeddah, so that's a very positive point. But we still have a lot of work to do, to keep them behind, and to make it, easy for us as a team. So there's going to be a lot of fight for developments in the coming weeks.
Coming to Australia, it looks very different around here. Resurfaced track, many changes to the corners. What do you think of the new layout?
I think big challenge. It's going to be extremely tough. I think looking at how the layout is now, there's going to be some big racing. 4 DRS zones, very fast turn 6, which was a very tricky corner before. You have the sun kind of in the dark, in the shadow. And you didn't know where to turn in before, but now we're arriving with 6 gear, and we're going to go through there in 6 gear. So it's going to be insane, probably one of the biggest challenge of the year as a corner. But yeah, it's a street circuit, but with very fast and flowy speed. So yeah, I look forward to see how it's going to feel.
There are, I would say, Lawrence, 2 teams, I think, that people are keeping a close eye on. And I'm going to go bold and say that they're Mclaren and Mercedes, because they're perhaps the ones that we thought were going to be strong this year. Traditionally, Mercedes go well. McLaren looked strong in Barcelona, and then it's all slightly come unravelled. I'm hoping it's Daniel Ricciardo's home race.
Yeah.
It could be a great weekend for him. Surely, he's got the crowd, he's got the home support. What are we thinking? Have they fixed their issues?
He would love it if it was, but I think that's probably going to be asking a bit too much. I think they're making progress week in, week out, but it's not an easy fix, and I think both Lando and Daniel accept that it's going to take time. That means this weekend could be challenging. I'm not saying Q1 challenging for Daniel for his sake and the fans' sake, but I do think it's going to be a struggle just to be even punching and fighting for points.
Lando was quite frank with me actually at the end of the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, and he said it's not going to get better. And because I tried to say, the only way is up. He's like, no, it's not. It could be down as well. And it's a realistic outlook, I guess, for them.
Yeah, they're definitely further back than they anticipated, but you're right, they could drop back even further, and that would be very difficult for a team that's made such progress and thought that this car was the one. I think they thought this was the car that'd be fighting these guys and not that way. So it's going to be a tough weekend, I think, and a tough first half of the year, but they've proved time and time and again, especially James Key, their technical director, they can get on top of things. It's just going to take time for those bits to come through the production line onto the car and make progress.
Well, it's the same sort of conversation going on at Mercedes. Toto Wolff talking about the learning that they're having to do at the moment. I don't think they understand their car. There was so much noise around that zero pod and the innovation perhaps that had come to the W13 car, but it just hasn't come to the fore, and he's already said he just doesn't think it's going to come together this weekend. We're going to have to wait for several weekends, I think.
I think they're being really humble about the fact that this is going to be a tough year and it's going to be a long year for them. I think it says a lot about that team that they're still second in the Constructors' Championship, ahead of Red Bull and punching effectively with a car that really is struggling. It's going to be interesting to see whether they are able to make progress this weekend and in the weekends to come, and when they decide whether they have to maybe switch focus to next year. But I think this weekend, I've heard they've got some new bits, and if that bolts onto the car and makes progress, that's all they can hope for.
Absolutely. Well, then we turn our attention to Red Bull. Max Verstappen driving brilliantly in Saudi. Loved that battle between him and Charles Leclerc. I feel like they're the favourites this weekend. That's kind of word on the street, word on the paddock, word in the paddock.
I think if you ask Max, he'd probably say privately they are the favourites. Publicly, he of course won't say that. But I had spent a little bit of time with him this morning in a written press session, and he sat back in the chair, he looked super relaxed. He's loving being a world champion. He's now got that win under his belt after he felt he probably should have won the first race in Bahrain. And he's coming here with a car that he knows he can compete. It's all effortless. And I think that's frightening for everyone else up and down this pit lane because he's operating at such a high level. And I think they are favourites this weekend. It's hard to look past them apart from these guys in red.
Well, let's look at these guys in red then. It's a tricky one to call because I think they are on the back foot here compared to Red Bull. That straight line speed is what's lacking for them, I guess, compared to Red Bull. I mean, they're a class above the rest, I guess, in terms of the rest of the paddock. But do we feel like they can hold on and keep up with Red Bull this weekend?
I think what is in their core is that they are getting the most out of their package weekend in, weekend out at the moment, and with both drivers, maybe Carlos a little bit less, but he admits that he's got some gains to make. But I think when they're both operating at a high level like we've seen this year, and getting the most out of the car. These guys should be competing, even if they haven't got the fastest car on the grid. You know, Charles' battle with Max, we've seen him come alive this year, and Carlos has got those skills as well. So if they can qualify well and put the car in the right place, even on a very fast circuit like this with 4 DRS zones, I still think they're in the mix, but I do think it's going to be harder for them than, say, a Red Bull to kind of hit the ground running.
Yes, I think perhaps Ferrari wishing these track changes hadn't been made at this point, because I think perhaps they'd have gone better on the old layout. But I had a chat with both Charles and Carlos a little earlier on, and this is what they had to say. Well, Charles, what's your preparation been like for Melbourne?
Well, arrived early first because jet lag is quite a thing here, and so yeah, just to get used to this time zone, quite a bit of training in general as always during the season, and then quite a bit of simulator work, especially because the track is new, the corners has changed, so we had the new track on the simulator, and we trained for that new track on the sim.
And what do you make of the new track?
Much quicker, and yeah, just much quicker, to be honest.
Will it suit your car?
I think the old one will have suited us better, but it's the way it is now, and we'll try to maximize everything this weekend as always, and hopefully Imola will probably be a track where it suits us a little bit better.
And in terms of all these DRS zones that people are talking about, are we going to see a better race really in Australia?
Oh yeah, it is. I mean, we've seen in the past 2 races this strategy with the DRS, and I'm pretty sure that we'll see it even more here, because it's yeah, basically all the straights have a DRS zone, so overtaking will be a thing. And clever racing can make a big difference here.
You're very good at the clever racing. We've seen that.
Well, thank you. I try to. Yeah, it is always quite tricky, but I always try to do the best job possible. And obviously, with the weakness that we have at the moment with the straight line speed against Red Bull, we need to try and play it smart.
Carlos, tell me how you're approaching this race in Melbourne.
Open-minded, no? Because you have a completely new track, new tarmac, no bumps, different curbs. It just looks like a bit of a different track to what we were used to here in the past. So open-minded into FP1, see how the car feels, see the driving around here, the DRS, the downforce levels. Just let's see.
From your first impressions, do you think it's one that the car will go well at?
Well, I mean, our car has been strong in both circuits, or all the circuits we've been to so far. But it's true that Jeddah, with more straight line, the Red Bull looked like the better car around there, and the better balance in terms of top speed and corner speeds. So given how long the straights have become here, maybe they are a bit more up for it, but I think we can still do a good job.
And just finally, sort of touching on your own situation with the car, what do you think's missing at the moment?
A bit of everything, to be honest. It's a bit of everything, but it's very small. You know, we're talking that I've been fighting for every pole position this year, and I've been little more than a tenth away from it. So it's definitely not. It's not far. We're not far from being up there, and I'm also P2 in the championship, only 10-12 points behind. No? So it hasn't been perfect. I definitely don't have the right feeling with the car right now, but I'm still holding on there and getting the car to be a bit more suited for my driving style, and me having to adapt the driving to this new generation of cars. So we'll get there.
It is going to be exciting to see how Ferrari go up against Red Bull at this track, and it's that time of the show, Lawrence.
Oh, it's a stressful time.
And there's no one to throw it to otherwise. It's just you and me. So I'm going to ask you first, who have you got on the podium this weekend?
So I've got Max win, I've got Carlos second, and I've got Charles third.
Okay, interesting.
What about you?
I'm going for a Max Verstappen win as well, a Checo P2, I'll tell you why in a second, and then P3, I think Carlos Sainz. Okay, so do you know that on the 8 occasions that a team has got a 1-2 here
we go.
They've gone on to win both championships.
Okay.
I put the Red Bull boys P1 and P2. Make of that what you will. As we know, our predictions count for nothing. They're usually wrong. Occasionally I'm right.
I'm going to remind you of this at the end of the year.
Yeah, exactly. But hey, look, it is going to be a fantastic race here at Albert Park. The Australians are buzzing for it. We are, I think everyone around the world is excited that we are finally going racing in Melbourne once more. Lawrence, thank you so much for your expert analysis. As always, we'll be here over the course of the weekend, bringing you all the latest from the Australian Grand Prix. Goodbye.